He leaned one hand against the laundry room wall, the other guiding himself toward me as the dryer rumbled behind us. The air smelled like fabric softener and damp cedar from his coat. I felt the first press of him, thick, hot, and my breath caught against the warm shirts hanging overhead. The edge of the metal shelf pushed into my back. He tried again, slower this time, but still met resistance. His hand on my hip tightened, knuckles pale. My knees felt weak, not from pain, but from the raw shock of finally giving into something I'd buried for years. Something I'd tucked away like old clothes in a bin marked, "Not now." "Slow," I whispered, pressing my palms to the cool enamel of the washing machine. He rested his forehead against my back, his breath warming the spot where the hose always leaked. I felt his heartbeat through his coat like it was syncing with mine. He eased back slightly, then moved forward with more care, turning the ache into something deeper, something fuller. The floor trembled with the dryer's hum. His movements matched its rhythm. My teeth bit down on my lips so hard I tasted metal. Outside, sleet tapped the high window above us like it was reminding us of the real world. But in that moment, it felt like time paused. No one else was home. My husband was at a work event. My daughter wouldn't be back until late. And yet, everything felt so fragile, like even a dropped sock might break the spell. He pushed a little farther, more careful now, stretching me in ways that made my breath come in small, stunned gasps. "You okay?" he whispered. I nodded. My eyes stung, not from pain, but from the strange rush of comfort and release. His next movement found the right spot, and suddenly I was gripping the detergent bottles beside me just to stay upright. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who did this. I'm 43, the one who remembers birthdays and orders groceries, who smooths chaos with a calm smile. He's 26, my neighbor's son, a quiet, steady presence who lost his mother and now lives alone. For years, he's fixed things in this old house, light switches, porch steps, the broken mailbox. But not the silence I carry inside. And somehow, in the quiet hum of the laundry room, with warm clothes drying inches away and the storm whispering at the windows, I let him try to fix that, too. For 7 years, we kept a respectful distance, friendly smiles, polite small talk, nothing more. But tonight, a blown fuse pulled us both down to the basement, flashlight in hand. The dryer still hummed softly, tossing half-dry linens we'd folded together after dinner. And now, his hands were sliding up beneath my thin cotton shirt, thumbs tracing skin no one had touched with tenderness in a long time. He moved forward again, and the dull ache inside me sharpened into something alive, electric, rhythmic, matching the soft rattle of coat hangers overhead. My body moved back toward him, answering instinctively. The friction sparked sharp pulses of pleasure that stole the breath from my throat. He said my name, just Claire, not the formal, Mrs. Keene, his voice rough, almost reverent. The dryer buzzed its end signal, but we didn't stop. We moved together, careful, deliberate. Each shallow motion felt like a conversation that had waited years to begin. My grip tightened on the metal shelf beside me as the heat inside me built, slowly but steadily, like a fuse counting down. I pressed back harder, feeling him grow more insistent, and something deep inside me finally gave way. It wasn't just physical, it felt like a lock inside me snapped open. His breath caught as he held onto my hips, anchoring himself while I trembled beneath the weight of release that rolled through me. My toes curled against the cold floor. I bit down on my sleeve to keep from crying out, the taste of fabric softener strangely grounding. His rhythm faltered as he reached his own edge, then he let out a low, broken sound and sank into stillness, buried deep, trembling. The dryer's light blinked on automatically, casting a soft, yellow glow over the laundry and our intertwined shadows. That light made it real. Made it undeniable. We had crossed a line that couldn't be erased. When he finally pulled away, I felt the emptiness at once, warmth replaced by a sudden chill. My legs trembled beneath me, but he caught me with one steady hand on my back. I turned, my thighs brushing the warm surface of the dryer, still trembling. He looked at me then, really looked. His expression was full of apology, wonder, and a fear that mirrored my own. The old bulb above us gave off a quiet hum, filling the space with that strange in-between sound of something trying to keep going. Upstairs, the furnace kicked in, just the house doing what it always does, pretending nothing had changed. Seth adjusted himself quickly, breath still uneven, and reached for my robe. His hands were shaking as he tied the sash tight around my waist, just like mine were. We stood there, wrapped in the soft hush of cooling metal and distant rain. I saw a bit of sawdust stuck to his cuff, from earlier, when he'd repaired the porch rail, and I ran my fingers along it like a question I didn't know how to ask. He caught my hand gently, pressed his lips to my knuckles, then took a small step back. Like space might erase what just happened. Like stepping away could bring back the line we'd crossed. But it was already gone. A creak above us, probably just the house settling, snapped the moment. He whispered, "I should go." I nodded, unable to find my voice. He looked back at me one more time, eyes bright, almost pleading. "This can't be the last time we talk." My throat clenched. I couldn't form a reply. Then he was gone, his boots moving quietly over the carpeted steps, and a soft click of the door followed. Rain filled the silence after him, swallowing the sound of his retreat. My legs gave out. I slid down the front of the dryer, warm metal pressing into my spine as I sat on the cold floor. The shirts above us still swayed gently, brushing my hair like they remembered something I wasn't ready to forget. What do you do when the person you're not supposed to want is the only one who really sees you? I didn't have a full answer. Only that the empty space in my chest had been replaced with something louder, deeper. Something that wouldn't let me go back to the version of myself I'd been before. If you've ever carried feelings too heavy to speak, too dangerous to admit, you might understand. You might feel it too. The quiet won't hold forever. Mornings here return like clockwork. By 5:45, I'm up. Walking the same hallways, fingers wrapping around the kettle's handle, setting it on the stove just before the thermostat clicks over from nighttime settings to something warmer, something that pretends to be comfort. The scent of yesterday's detergent still lingers in the air. Lavender. The same brand I've bought for 15 years, ever since David said it reminded him of his grandmother's linens. The coffee machine gurgles behind me, filling the carafe while outside, the sky starts to shift, blue rising behind the old maple tree Seth trimmed last spring. David comes down just as he always does, already half-dressed for the day, phone in hand. The glow of the screen reflects in his glasses as he scrolls through the markets. And I stand there, holding a cup that's suddenly too warm in my hands, wondering how much longer I can keep moving through a life built on memory and habit, now that I've felt something that made me question it all. We trade the kind of smiles that barely touch skin. The usual morning questions drift between us like fog. Are the kids up? Did you see the gas bill? Need anything from town? Then he's out the door, shoes scuffing the foyer tile he's promised to replace when bonus season rolls around. I teach art twice a week at the rec center. Just enough to feel like I'm doing something, not enough to disrupt David's business trips. Most afternoons, I practice harmless small talk for cocktail hours and work dinners with his colleagues' wives, phrases that blend in without setting off alarms. Great keynote. Love the hors d'oeuvres. The kids are neck-deep in college prep. All technically true, but none of it breathing. That emptiness felt manageable, until Seth started showing up. Always with a tool belt and some easy joke that made my laugh sound like music instead of something I'd forgotten how to use. We first met when he was 19, long limbs, pale eyes, fresh grief in a black suit at his mother's funeral. I brought casseroles. He thanked me with a voice that tried to stay strong, though his eyes were still red. A month later, he rang the doorbell. I'd once mentioned the porch railing was loose, and now it had finally given way. He fixed it for nothing, said idle hands kept the ache away. And after that, he just kept showing up. Tightening gutters, replacing mossy boards, realigning the garage track David never had time to touch. I'd hand him lemonade and sit with him on the porch steps while dusk chased the bugs and the citronella candles dared them to linger. Years passed like that, small scenes stitched together until they formed something bigger. I remember him kneeling beside me in the attic one fall, helping sort Christmas lights while dust floated in the beam of a flashlight. The wood creaked beneath me, and his hand shot out to steady my elbow before I could misstep. My heart skipped with the kind of stupid nervousness that doesn't belong to mothers of teenagers. I almost laughed it off, until I saw the flush in his ears. We didn't speak about it, just turned back to the tangled wires. But the air felt heavier than cobwebs, thicker than silence. One spring, he replaced the garden gate after a windstorm. I handed him iced tea while he measured hinge placements, and when our fingers touched, I felt a jolt, sharp and surprising. Like brushing a 9-volt battery. He pulled back, mumbled a thanks, and turned to his work while storm clouds built behind him like a warning. He never crossed the line. Never even came close. Always yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, the politeness of a boy raised to honor women who wore wedding rings before he was even born. But now and then, I'd find him staring at my half-finished canvases, those I'd left leaning behind the sofa. He never said a word. just studied the brushstrokes with a quiet reverence, like he was listening to something inside them. No one else ever looked at those paintings long enough to realize they all stopped halfway. David liked Seth, said he had an old soul and charged too little. The boys liked him too. He'd throw the football until his shoulder hurt. Tutor them in math I'd long forgotten. At New Year's bonfires, he'd run the fire pit while I stood nearby with cocoa, fingers thawing under the sparks. I listened to him explain constellations to laughing teens. And whenever he spoke about Orion's belt, those 3 bright stars lined in tension, I always caught his glance. And every time, I felt it. That quiet pull, the kind that settles low in your chest and waits. That gravity. Then came last March, the night the power went out across the county. David was in Tampa for a conference when the blackout hit. Seth pulled into our driveway with a generator rattling in his truck bed. Together, we wrestled it through the garage while the kids lit candles upstairs, their laughter echoing like it belonged to someone else's life. When he yanked the pull cord, the bulb above us flickered to life, casting a hard white glow that turned our breath to steam. We laughed, loud, startled, too close to each other's open mouths. The generator roared behind us, masking the silence inside me. The clarity. If we stayed in that box of warmth and light any longer, the excuses would evaporate. He packed up quickly, murmured goodnight, and I watched from the threshold as his tires crunched over the new snow, waiting until his taillights disappeared. After that night, we were careful. Daylight jobs only, open doors, sleeves rolled low. Still, the smallest tasks vibrated with something bigger. When he carried paint cans to the basement, my breath caught just hearing his boots on those narrow stairs. If he backed his truck to the shed, I found myself at the kitchen window, watching the sun catch the curve of his forearm, the dust in his hair. I kept finding reasons to thank him. Fresh baked bread, extra zucchini, homemade jam, gratitude offered as camouflage for a hunger that nearly broke through every time he smiled. 2 months ago, he started refinishing the porch swing. Each night, sunset turned the sawdust in his hair to gold. The boys were away on college orientation tours. David was strung between airports and time zones. One evening, I brought him a cold beer and asked about his father. Seth said the old man still slept on the couch, said the bed felt too wide. I swallowed against the ache in my throat. We stood close while cicadas buzzed like static, and though he didn't speak again, he brushed sawdust from my sleeve. Barely a touch, but I still feel the heat of it. 10 days ago, I was folding bath mats when the breaker tripped in the laundry room. I called out for Liz, thinking she was still home. She'd already left for rehearsal. Instead, Seth answered from the hallway. He'd stopped by to drop off a porch swing bolt. We stood under the flickering tube light while he reset the breaker. I thanked him. He turned to leave, and before I could stop myself, I reached out to dust lint from his collar. He inhaled sharply. The sound was soft, but it cracked something wide open in me. The moment teetered, held its breath. Then the dryer buzzed, a sharp ending we hadn't asked for. Tonight, the rain hit the eaves like a standing ovation. Another fuse blew. Habit brought us both to the basement. No kids, no husband, just the thick silence between cycles and the hum of a half-loaded dryer. He replaced the fuse with calm hands, but the spark between us wasn't electrical. When the dryer door clicked shut, we stood facing each other in that concrete hush, the bulb above us swaying, throwing slow-moving shadows across his jaw. 7 years of polite restraint folded and shelved between us, too heavy to stay balanced. One tentative touch, then another, and then the quiet gave way to something we couldn't name, only feel. Now I sit on the laundry room floor, knees drawn to my chest, listening as the rain softens from percussion to whisper. His scent still clings to my robe, Thai wood smoke, damp cedar, and something that smells like storm air. Upstairs, the fridge hums back to life, the house slipping into its daily rhythm without asking if I'm ready. I should feel relief that no one walked in, that nothing irreparable was seen. Instead, there's only the aftershock. A raw, vibrating disbelief that what I felt, what we did, wasn't some grief-warped fantasy. We'd spent years sidestepping the gravity, denying the heat of every accidental brush. But in that one fragile, forbidden breath, we both let ourselves feel something real. Seth didn't come by for 3 days. Long enough for doubt to sink its claws in. Long enough for memory to distort, for my mind to sketch over the rawness with reason. I watered the porch plants. Wiped the smudges off the dryer lid. Rewound the moment until it played like a dream I wasn't sure I'd lived. Then Thursday afternoon, I heard his truck. I didn't even have to look. just the sound of the engine idling at the curb, as if he hadn't decided whether to stay. I watched from behind the curtain, heart hammering a rhythm I'd forgotten belonged to me. The engine cut. A door creaked open. He stepped out with a small cardboard box in his hands. He walked up the path like a man delivering borrowed time. The knock was soft, civil. My fingers trembled as I cracked open the door. Summer heat spilled in. He held up the box between us like an offering. "Door handle you said needed replacing," he said, voice measured, gaze carefully averted from mine. I hadn't asked for any handle. Still, I stepped back. He crossed the threshold, his boots squeaking faintly against the foyer tile, another chore David keeps promising to fix. He set the box down on the hallway console. The sound echoed just enough to remind me of the line we'd already crossed. We slipped into small talk. The weather, tree limbs down from the storm. Cooler forecast this weekend, every word brittle. The way you speak when you're trying to forget the sound of someone saying your name while pressing into you. Then came the thundering stampede, our sons, barreling down the stairs in cleats, calling for rides to opposite fields. Life, crashing back in like it had been waiting just outside the door, tapping its foot. I handed them snack sacks, brushed a crumb from my younger's cheek like I always do. Seth stood back, tugging his cap lower. He used to ruffle both their heads before waving them off. Today, he only nodded. They vanished in a gust of door slams and liniment-scented gear bags, the kind of noise that always covered the quiet we didn't want to name. And then it was just us again, left in the wake of their energy like driftwood after a tide. I opened the box without thinking. Inside, the bronze handle I once pointed out on a neighbor's door. Neatly taped screws, washers lined in a paper nest. "You remembered I liked this finish," I said before I could stop myself. He shrugged. I listened. Our eyes met. The air between us thickened, the way it does right before summer thunder, saturated, heavy, expectant. My throat went dry. "You want coffee?" I asked, even though the pot had gone cold. "Sure," he said, voice lower now. The kitchen felt smaller than it had in years. The only sounds were the soft tick of the wall clock and the fridge's gentle hum. I filled the kettle, and the sputter of water hitting metal filled the pause. He leaned against the counter's edge, arms crossed, his elbow nudging the ceramic canister. A spoon shifted inside with a sharp clink that felt louder than it should. When the kettle clicked off, I poured, sliding one mug his way. Our fingers brushed the rim at the same moment, bare skin meeting fired clay. A flash of something hotter than the steam arced between us. He pulled back first, clearing his throat like a man trying to swallow something heavy. "How's the painting?" he asked. A gentle question, no accusation, just presence. I hesitated. "I haven't picked up a brush since winter." He searched my face. Something flickered there, regret, maybe, or recognition. "Blue looks good on you," he murmured. I glanced down. The old blue tee I'd thrown on without thinking was spattered with paint from a canvas I abandoned months ago. Heat crept up my neck. I turned to the sink, rinsing strawberries to give my hands something to do. The faucet hissed, a welcome cover for the uneven breaths I couldn't quite steady. He moved beside me, quietly, no announcement, just there, close enough that our shoulders brushed when I reached for a berry. His arm angled slightly, blocking the spray from hitting my shirt, a small, protective instinct that made my stomach dip. I turned. His face was right there, eyes unreadable, steady. Water rushed on, forgotten. Neither of us moved to shut it off. "You've been here for years," I whispered. "Why does it feel different now?" My voice barely crossed the space between us. His eyes dropped to my mouth, lingered there like memory. "Because you finally looked back," he said. The words cracked something in me, something brittle and long-held. I felt the tremor in his breath, in mine. Then, footsteps scraped across the porch. Our elderly neighbor on her morning walk, cane tapping rhythmically against brick. I jolted, elbowed the saucepan handle. It clanged against the sink, spraying water like startled applause. We sprang apart, breath catching mid-thought. Outside, the neighbor shuffled on, oblivious. Seth reached to shut the faucet. Then, as if the movement were inevitable, he wiped a droplet from my cheek with a single knuckle. The touch was rough, too deliberate to be innocent, too gentle to be accidental. I flinched, not from the contact, from how badly I wanted to lean into it. He froze, hand hovering, his gaze scanning mine like he was waiting for a word I couldn't say. I backed away, my pulse hammered against my ribs like wings in a jar. We retreated, safety through motion. He unboxed the door handle and got to work. I pretended the mail needed sorting. The hush between us was louder than drills or thunder. It filled the spaces we used to move through without thinking. He knelt by the jam, drill whining, the metallic bite of it cutting into the silence. I watched his forearms tense, the same ones I remembered pressed against my hips in the laundry room. He tightened the final screw, stood, brushed sawdust from his jeans with a flick that felt more like grounding than cleaning. "Works smooth," he said, voice low, gritty. I reached to test it. Our arms crossed, bare skin grazed. The latch clicked shut, the sound too final. Like a line being drawn. The door stood half open between us. "Thank you," I whispered. His hand landed on the inside knob. Mine rested on the outside. Both of us holding a threshold that felt heavier than the house itself. The silence swelled until I couldn't breathe through it. Then, boom, a thunderclap rolled over the hills, vibrating through the floorboards. Seth glanced toward the sky beyond the window. The clouds were gathering. We moved without speaking, instinct guiding us to the upstairs windows. He took the stairs first. I followed, gaze catching the subtle shift of his shoulders beneath his shirt. Lightning flashed, brief and blinding. The hallway lamp fizzled out. Another breaker. We reached the landing, corridor bathed in blue light from the paused television screen my daughter had left on edit mode. The eerie glow painted us ghost white. "Breakers again," he said, starting to turn. But I caught his wrist. The pause between breath and heartbeat stretched endless. Rain pelted the roof, drumming against cedar rafters like an anxious pulse overhead. He turned, slowly, our faces lit only by the TV's flickering glow, shadows carving sharp lines across cheekbones and collarbones. "Claire," he said, a warning, but it came out like a plea. I stepped closer. Our chests brushed, a soft collision neither of us softened. His free hand hovered again at my waist. But this time, there was no polite retreat. Electricity, not from the tripped breaker, arched between us. My voice broke open. What if keeping quiet is the real mistake? His answer, one word, one breath, was shaky. Then, "Tell me how loud you can bear." We leaned in. Breath mingled. The television stuttered behind us like candlelight on restless walls. The first brush of his lips. Feather soft, tasting like hesitation, like storm air and longing pressed into skin. The house groaned, a low creak of old wood settling, as if it, too, was holding its breath. Then, shouts outside, car doors, laughter. The boys, back early. We jerked apart like startled shadows. Split toward opposite staircases just as the front door slammed open. Noise tumbled into the foyer. I clutched the banister, heart sprinting. Seth's voice, casual, floated down. "Power's out, I'll check the panel." The boys groaned in reply. "Normal, easy, pretend." I slipped into the dark hallway bathroom, hands braced against cool tile. In the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. Cheeks flushed, eyes bright, storm-glossed and unguarded. Behind me, the new door handle clicked shut. Smoother than any boundary we'd ever built. A clean, quiet seal. But the crack, it had already formed, wide enough for truth to start breathing through. We hadn't fallen yet, but the floor beneath felt thinner with every step. He stepped closer, fingertips ghosting over a dry swirl of cobalt. "Still wet here." His voice was low, uncertain. "Yesterday," I said, throat rough from everything unsaid. His hand hovered, first over the paint, then near my shoulder. Close, not quite touching. The scent of rain clung to his skin. Beneath it, that faint motor oil tang he never entirely lost. The room shrank around us, the air too thick, too charged. My pulse thundered, loud enough I feared he could hear it over the storm. "Claire," he said my name like a warning wrapped in longing. Soft as cloth, I turned to him. The lamp caught raindrops still tangled in his hair. Tiny prisms, glittering. "We keep stopping," he said, breath uneven. "And it doesn't change anything." My reply cracked down the center. I thought if I kept quiet long enough, the feelings would go away. He shook his head once. A crooked smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Mine only got louder. Another thunderclap. The lamp flickered in sync, like it knew. Without thinking, I reached for his wrist. Fingertips grazing the pale scar where that old blister had healed. His hand turned, fingers finding mine. Curling around them, sure, certain. We both drew in the same breath. Held it, let it shake. Outside, rain hammered the window like a heartbeat trying to get in. He leaned forward. His lips brushed mine, barely contact. A whisper of heat. The air between us folded. I pressed closer, answering with my whole body. The invoice folder slid from the desk. Papers flurried to the floor. Neither of us looked. His arms wrapped around my waist, tugging me forward until his heartbeat beat against mine. Hard, certain, alive. He tasted like storm-washed skin. And faint mint, from a lozenge tucked under his tongue. My fingers curled into his damp hair. His hands slipped beneath my sweater, slow, reverent. Palms mapping the arc of my back, tracing the tremble with each breath I took. The desk pressed against the backs of my thighs. Around us, half-finished canvases stood silent, like witnesses afraid to speak. He paused, forehead resting against mine, stillness, charged, a moment held open like the breath before a confession. If you need me to stop. His voice was a thread, barely there. My hands clenched his shirt. Don't. The lamp dimmed again, shadows flickering across the wall. Then steadied, our silhouettes blurred into one. He lifted me onto the desk. Papers slid under denim, the wood creaked, an old complaint. Rain beat its steady rhythm above, masking the hush of breath and shifting fabric. He found the waistband of my jeans, fingers brushing, hesitating. I covered his hands, guided, buttons popped open, tiny sounds, huge meaning. My pulse thundered, matched the storm. He stepped closer, the narrow desk a clumsy stage. His breath caught at the lack of room. I braced my feet on the drawers, knees parting. His fingers trembled at my hips. The first angle was wrong, too high. Pressure stung. He froze, apology rising in his eyes. I cupped his jaw. Again, I whispered, a single word, a thread back to the laundry room. He shifted, one arm cradling behind my back, steadying. The other guiding, until warmth met warmth. The stretch made my breath catch. Almost too much. I exhaled slowly, muscles yielding. He pressed deeper, careful, patient, inch by inch. My spine arched off the desk. Rain hissed in the gutter, like the sky applauding. He held still, chest rising against mine, breath ragged. Then he moved, measured thrusts, small and steady. Enough to let my body remember how to open. If you need me to stop. His voice was barely a breath. My fingers fisted in the fabric of his shirt. Don't. The lamp dimmed again, a flicker like hesitation. When the light steadied, our shadows overlapped on the far wall, no longer two, but one. He lifted me onto the narrow desk, the invoice papers sliding beneath us. Denim rasped against wood. The desk creaked in protest, old screws straining with each movement. Outside, rain pounded in a steady rhythm, a shroud for the soft, unmistakable sounds of clothes shifting and breath catching. His fingers found the waistband of my jeans, then paused, trembling. I reached down, covered his hands, guiding them. The buttons popped open, each one impossibly loud. My pulse throbbed in my ears, matching the storm's tempo beyond the window. He leaned in, only to realize the desk's height left little room for grace. Our bodies struggled against the angles. I braced my feet on the side drawers, parting my legs to give him space. His touch at my hips was reverent, almost shaking. His first attempt was too high, pressure sharp, breath snagged. He froze, apology already forming on his lips. I cupped his jaw. Again, I whispered. He adjusted, one arm curling behind my shoulders to steady me as the other guided with slow precision, until warmth met warmth. The stretch stole my breath. Almost too much, but I exhaled slowly, letting my body open in answer. He pressed deeper, inch by patient inch, until my back lifted from the wood, seeking more. Outside, the gutters hissed with overflowing rain. Inside, we barely breathed. He held still for a moment, trembling. Then he began to move, small, controlled thrusts, giving me time to catch up to what we'd started. The friction started soft, embers under skin, growing warmer with each pass. My fingers clung to his shoulders, grounding myself in the tension of his restraint. The desk bit into the backs of my thighs. Canvases around us trembled faintly on the walls. He kissed just below my ear, whispered a question. I answered without words, legs tightening around his hips. He took that as permission. His rhythm deepened, slow, then slower, drawing nearly all the way back before sliding in again with unbearable pressure that made my spine arch. Each glide stroked places I'd forgotten could still respond. Nerves reignited. My breath came in hiccups of need. The pressure inside me coiled tight, low, hot, ready to break. He tipped my chin up, kissed the edge of my mouth just as it trembled open. Lightning flashed, illuminating droplets racing each other down the glass. Rivulets, like our breaths, chasing. He thrust again, finding that hidden place that sent my body locking. My cry was raw against his shoulder. He groaned into my hair, hips stuttering as control unraveled. The wave of release rolled over me, soundless, blinding. My muscles clenched, tears pricking behind closed eyes. He followed with a guttural exhale, body jerking once, twice, then still. The space between us filled with heat, and something that didn't dissipate. We stayed like that, entangled. Thunder faded into distance. Our breathing was the only sound. The desk cooled beneath me. The storm gave way to a light, constant patter. He eased out carefully, one hand smoothing my sweater back into place. My skin tingled with the loss. Emptiness swept in, but so did a strange stillness, a hush of something long overdue. We dressed slowly, wordlessly. I smoothed down invoices. He retrieved a stray paintbrush from the floor. His fingers traced my cheek, one soft touch. I gave him a smile, shaky but real. He gave one back. The lamp flickered again, threatening dark. This time, neither of us flinched. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. In the silence that followed, our hearts found their own rhythm. For years, we'd folded feelings into silence, each goodbye a paper cut. But tonight, in a room too small for pretending, we unfolded, one breath at a time. Sunday came sugar bright, the storm scrubbed clean from the sky. My limbs felt heavy, waterlogged, like I was wearing soaked wool beneath my skin. I stood at the stove flipping pancakes for the boys, each one golden, round, and too perfect. I flipped the last one twice, distracted. Then I remembered, David's flight lands before noon. And I'd set no place for him. The scent of batter curdled in my stomach. I scraped syrup off the stovetop with the same patience I used to scrape guilt from my chest. But some stains don't come off in one rinse. Some storms arrive without thunder until they're already overhead. In the quiet hum of daily life, where routine dulls the senses, moments like these strike without warning, cracking open rooms we thought were long sealed. This wasn't just about infidelity. It was about returning to oneself, to buried feeling, to breath. Claire and Seth didn't fall, they folded. And maybe that's the most dangerous part. Not passion, but recognition. Their story isn't wrapped in bows. But tonight, two people chose honesty over silence, and sometimes, that's louder than anything. Thank you to every reader who sat in the storm with Claire, felt the tension between breaths, and stayed to witness the unfolding. This story is for anyone who's ever wondered what if, and for those brave enough to admit still me too. Disclaimer. This is a work of fiction created for emotional exploration and adult storytelling. All characters and events are imaginary, and any resemblance to real people is purely coincidental. This story contains mature themes meant for readers 18+ only. Reader discretion is advised.